I think it's the right decision to me.
Hasty decision by Chelsea and a hasty decision by Todd Boehly especially.
There are no foundations in Chelsea Football Club for managers to establish themselves and flourish long term.
They don't. I genuinely wanted them not to follow the Roman fire and sack kind of thing. But
So the club is entirely about betting on players. Chelsea Football Club has never ever betted on managers, and it's no.
Hello, people of the internet and of this podcast, dear people. So, welcome back to another episode of Sports Entertainment Weekly, and we are back with a shocking announcement that Chelsea Football Club announced yesterday that Mauricio Pochettino, the guy who took Tottenham Hotspurs to the UEFA Champions League and almost took PSG to their first ever Champions League, has been sacked by Chelsea Football Club by Todd Boehly, who was a major appointment to start their new era of players after buying in a new young crop of players and to kickstart their new era, probably replicating the Roman Abramovich era that they all glorified. So I think the previous British Prime Minister before Rishi Sunak, there is Liz Truss, lasted 46 days in the British Prime Minister's office. I think the next Chelsea manager lasts more days than Liz Truss. So let's get on started with this. So
I think it is an impressive, start or impressive career CV that you've given Poch. But let's not overhype and overreact on why Poch is sacked. If we take, if we actually consider the whole season, Poch has been bang average. And to be entirely honest, the last 5 games is becoming a good momentum. Sacking up at this point in time is the wrong decision, but sacking him in an overall point is probably not the. I think it's the right decision to me. See, it was he was due sacking long back. Probably the right time for him to get sacked or to sack him was after the Arsenal defeat 5-0. They gave him some time. And the news I'm reading it, even if they had won against Liverpool in the FA or the EFL finals, wouldn't have mattered to them. So I think this was long coming for Poch, and I think he also knew. And the way he reacted to most of the press conference, it was like he was stress-free for the most of the last month because he knew that he was going to go, and I think that gave him a little bit more freedom, in my opinion. But I feel it is not an overall bad decision. The timing may be really terrible, and when Chelsea are looking for sustainability and stability and all that kind of words, I don't know what that actually means to the management. I feel it doesn't. It's not a terrible decision at the end of the day, but who they are going to replace Poch with might be a bigger call than sacking Poch itself. So, yeah.
So picking on your point, so you Chelsea Football Club started the decade very well with the Europa League trophy. So and after that things started maybe going a little bit downhill and maybe a farther.
Probably I need to correct you there. We won the Champions League. Go on.
Yeah, okay. Okay, you won the Champions League. But after that, it went pretty much downhill after that. So from Lampard, from Tuchel and to Pochettino and to the next question mark manager. So picking on your point, Anirudh, so we as the Chelsea native here, what do you think about the manager instability over the past 4 to 5 years and how Chelsea should adopt their manager policy in the coming decade or the next 5 years and how this decade should unfold? Yeah.
See, I think...
Charlie, you mentioned that you were shocked by the announcement. So one thing, and combined with that, how Anirudh reacted, pretty casually, business as usual demeanor. It might not make sense to a lot of people who don't support Chelsea, but what Anirudh says makes perfect sense to me because you have to look at the context of Chelsea's history with managers in general, not just last decade. And one thing, when Abramovich sold Chelsea to Boehly, it was a complete top-to-bottom change. But one thing that has remained unchanged since the Abramovich era is the manager sacking. And it's more simple than what people make of. It's not a sacking based on this season's performance alone. It is very part of the Chelsea club's football culture that there are no foundations in Chelsea Football Club for managers to establish themselves and flourish long term. Chelsea Football Club in its last 20 years has never ever invested in managers. The club has always betted itself on players. They always buy the players and they make a spine out of the players. We had it in the era, like the post 2005, we had that spine of Drogba up front, Lampard in the middle, Terry at the back, Peter Cech in goal, and everything else revolved around that. The managers are always temporary handymen who come in, make use of these good tools that has already been assembled by the club and wins trophies. So the club is entirely about betting on players. Chelsea Football Club has never ever betted on managers. And it's no insult to any of these managers because look at the managers we have fired. We fired Jose Mourinho. We fired Carlo Ancelotti. We fired Luis Felipe Scolari. We fired Antonio Conte. We fired Thomas Tuchel who delivered another Champions League. So it's not about the ability of the manager. Getting fired from the Chelsea manager seat should raise no question about the manager's potential in itself. It is simply the club's custom. It is the culture. It is very much imprinted in the very nature of the club, that the club is always going to invest in players, and it is the players that will last. It is the players who look at Drogba's career at Chelsea, look at Lampard, and even like few uncelebrated heroes like William Carvalho, Fabregas, so Hazard. We invest in players. We buy players young. We give them time to develop. We support them through their on and off phases. Players do not get sold easily by Chelsea. And if Chelsea need to retain the players, they do always keep retaining them. So this has always been the club's policy, that we are going to bet on players, we are going to develop the players, and the managers are just there to use these players so that we can win trophies. And the point when the club sees that a manager is not winning trophies, because that's the only purpose the manager is bought in for. It's not to develop a footballing culture. It's not to establish themselves like Klopp.
No, yeah, I probably agree with whatever he said, because he's explained what Roman has done for Chelsea. And see, the thing is, when the ownership changed, I actually really expected that change in culture to happen also. I genuinely expected that the new ownership would have a clean slate and they would start fresh. And most of the things they don't. I genuinely wanted them not to follow the Roman fire and sack kind of thing, but probably it's not happening. And it looks like he's on a even on a vicious path than what Roman actually was. So I feel that it should change, and there are not a lot of managers actually, if they keep on doing this. Roman actually had a plan. Even they won something in the Roman era, and Boli era. It's like becoming pretty obvious. They are just sacking and hiring without any actual. I don't think so. They're taking a lot of inputs. I don't think so. It makes a lot of footballing sense. There's a lot of sense that lacks with Boli era and Ekbali era. So I have question marks, but it is very hard for me to judge these ownership too. Because we can't sit here and judge the ownership like how we judge managers. It basically takes around 5 to 6 years for a management or an ownership to settle in and actually what ideas they want to implement on the club. And I, for their sake, hope that they get this signing or this manager signing absolutely bang on. Because they gave Potter 5 years and they gave Poch only 2 years, and I don't think so. And the manager who's going to come, apparently, the news I'm reading is he's going to get a long deal, probably, and they're expecting him to do Champions League and also expect him to compete in trophies. So, if they are going to hire a young manager and expecting this out of a championship level manager, or that is a type of manager we are linked with at the moment, I don't think so. There's a huge mismatch between ambition and the candidates that they've selected. So I feel this has to stop somewhere. This has to fit in somewhere, because the players that they have selected, no, they're completely young, and the difference between Roman era and now is all the players that we had were kind of established or establishing, and they were like extremely good in what they do. And these players, we don't know what they are going to deliver. So we don't know what they are actually good at. Most of the players are young. If we give them the unsettled feeling, it is really hard for them to stay at Chelsea and develop their career. So they might actually look somewhere. Though that is actually one of the biggest fears. So I feel they have to start trusting the process and get this absolutely bang on.
Great, crystal clear and bang on the heart, passionate discussions on the manager sacking Anirudh and VS. So let's address some points from the other elephant in the room. So Arvind, as the fellow Liverpool fans in this episode, so we've always went toe to toe with Chelsea, right? We've sometimes struggled against Manchester City, we've sometimes struggled in Manchester United, but we've always struggled against Chelsea at the bridge. It was never ever easy to win points at the bridge. So as Liverpool fans and as neutral fans, how do you see this manager sacking, and how do you see one of the rival clubs going forward?
If you're looking at Man City, Liverpool over the last 9 years, and even Arsenal under Mikel Arteta, we always see that the club is giving the manager a proper structure, and they're believing in the manager's vision and his tactics. And on the contrary, when you look at Chelsea, there's always a flurry of changes happening every transfer window. So last window, Pochettino came in, then you brought in a bunch of players like Caicedo, then Disasi, who else? Cole Palmer, etc.
You can name a lot of players, man. So don't try and name
absolutely. Yeah. So it's really difficult for me also to remember who all you guys signed. But then, when you're not giving a manager time, stability, and the players which he exactly wants, you're basically setting up for disaster. And this is what exactly has happened with Pochettino. We saw Pochettino get off to a pretty shaky start. But then again, he got his momentum back, and Chelsea started playing well. But then again, due to a couple of injuries, Pochettino was left with a very less number of options available to him. And then again, towards the end of the season, after getting hammered by Arsenal at the Emirates, Chelsea picked up their form and they played extremely brilliant football. And I think there was some table which said that from the beginning of 2024, Chelsea have secured the fourth highest points. So what I feel is it's a hasty decision by Chelsea and a hasty decision by Claude Boehly especially to sack Pochettino. Although I do know why Chelsea fans didn't like Pochettino, but then I think the board should have given Pochettino a couple of months in the next season just to ascertain how he is developing with a set squad as well as players who he wants. So yeah, as Anirudh had said, the culture of chopping and changing managers left, right, and center may have worked under Abramovich because Abramovich had a plan. It may similarly not work with Boli because he's pretty new to this sport. So we know that which sport does he have teams in? The Elephants, I think it was American football, right?
Yeah, MLS.
Yeah, so there's a huge difference between American football and soccer, which the Yanks love to call. So yeah.
I think he's invested majorly in that baseball, and he's trying to implement whatever baseball is
Exactly.
that is never going to work in football.
Exactly.
No, it is a difficult fit. He's trying to fit,
Absolutely.
but I don't think that will work.
But then you're giving off 8-year contracts to players who could potentially turn out to be flops. Could also be pretty disadvantageous because getting rid of them will be pretty difficult. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Chelsea's current state. And I feel if Chelsea like back a manager who has a long-term vision, they should stick with him and instead of sacking him like say 6 months or a year after he has been appointed, Chelsea should give him more time. That's the key point I'd like to make.
Great points, Arvind. Like you have emphasized the points about giving the managers their own players and to stack a squad from there. So keeping in mind from this, I want to pull in a topic that has intrigued me in the last 1 week since Chelsea have been embroiled in this manager sacking, right? So there is clearly stark differences between the management structure and the hierarchy and the way in which managers have been hired in the Roman Abramovich era and the Todd Boehly era. Okay. So obviously, after Pochettino, some new young managers, possibly from Spain or Portugal, some young tactical manager should come in as pointed by Anirudh here. So Chelsea fans, native Chelsea fans, over to you. So what do you think is actually the difference between both these eras, and what would their possible next manager picks would be, and what would be their shortlist going forward? So
one thing that you have to
clearly
mark out here at the start of the Roman era, you have to remember that the club was in a pretty much stable state. Chelsea were contesting in European football without ever being heavyweights. And before Roman took over the club had a very stable phase where Claudio Ranieri, who is more renowned for his title win with Leicester City, was manager of Chelsea for 4 straight years. The players over there the squad did not have a combined average age of 21 like now. And Ranieri had effectively blooded in a few youngsters from the academy like John Terry. He had bought in Frank Lampard from West Ham before Roman came into the picture, that is. And most importantly, he had bought in Claude Makelele from Real Madrid to Chelsea. So there was already some key players and experienced players doing their trade at Chelsea when Roman took over and pumped in the cash. So what Roman had to do was to upgrade on the existing infrastructure and make it better. And Roman did it brilliantly well. He wanted trophies and he hired a man who is perfect for winning trophies. So in came Jose Mourinho, and Mourinho with him. Mourinho, the special one. The special one with him, he bought in, I think, Arjen Robben and Didier Drogba back then. And then Petr Cech started delivering on his performances. And suddenly, a very good above-average team who was competitive suddenly became super strong under a manager, because Jose Mourinho, right now, people think he's just an interview merchant. But back in the day, he was a revolutionary. He was the first person in 21st century football to introduce 5 midfielders in the center and make that midfield a defensive unit so that the workload of the defense itself gets taken away. Makelele position being named after Makelele is also a Makelele role. That is also something that Mourinho did. So that is a big difference. When Roman took over the club, he had to just upgrade on the existing infrastructure, which was very solid. The foundations were solid. It was well set. They just had to bring in players to upgrade it. And they did it very well. Easier said than done. But Roman, Mourinho and the group, they did it very well. And they also had, I think, Pete de Visier is probably not a very popular term in footballing circles, but he is the ultimate scout. He is the god of all scouts. And Mourinho and Roman back then, Roman admitted the fact that he was no expert in football, although he loved the game. So what Roman did was he paid the money and he let people who knew football run football. Because Mourinho, in his own interview, if you remember, he said once that it's a very famous interview as well. It's a very famous clip. Roman asked, "Which attacker do you want? Do you want Ronaldinho? Do you want Shevchenko?"
Yeah.
And he said, "No, I want Drogba." Roman was like,
Drogba.
"Who is this Drogba?" And
Who is Drogba?
Mourinho's legendary line, "Pay, Roman, shut up and pay.
Yeah.
Don't talk, just
Again,
pay." Yeah, again, Roman was trusting the people who knew football. It was Mourinho who wanted Drogba in, not Roman Abramovich. So, and it was also the scouts. It was led by Chelsea. Did not have an academy set up even back then. It was people who knew football, running football by the money which Roman was paying. Now, Todd Boehly era, when he took over, the club was in shambles in the sense a lot of the key figures were already over there. The foundations were completely not there. And he started to run things which he probably should not have, because he was the acting sporting director in the first season he took over. He was doing transfer negotiations, he was picking targets, and he was going on interviews saying that, okay, we can play 4-4-3, 11 outfield players on a pitch. So that, I think, is a very basic difference. Boehly seems to have a bit more of an ego than Roman. Boehly probably is a very good and successful businessman in his own right, but sport, especially football, can be a very complicated, nuanced structure. It's a very intricate business to run a football club, and he probably did not have that warm-up period where he could just sit, listen to experts, and then proceed further. I think that is where Boehly was wrong and Roman was right. But be fair to Boehly, I think Roman had better foundations to build on than what Boehly inherited, especially after the COVID crisis. So
the thing is,
Roman's job was easier and he was better.
So the thing is, most of the point that he's saying is right. The major difference between what the Roman era, Boehly era is like, we all want to look at Boehly. Roman is a single man who had his own sole decision. That is not the case with Todd Boehly and Egbali. They are a consortium. So we keep forgetting that they are a consortium. And Boehly is probably the more outspoken one, and he doesn't have a lot of say. It's Egbali who takes a lot of decision. He has around 70% of stake at Chelsea, and Boehly around 30%. So what happens is, when they initially took over, it was basically a lot of Boehly and Egbali in tandem, but I don't think so. A lot of the thing is, any decision that has to be taken has to be a collective decision, and it was very easy during Roman era. It is like one man taking a decision, and he doesn't need to rely on anyone else taking a decision in for him, or he doesn't have to wait anyone taking a decision regarding the club on who the manager is or whether we should sack. But this is a little different than what Chelsea has faced, because it's a consortium. It has a collective mind, and the setup is made also. The manager, head coach, he has a lot of confusion between that two. So he's introduced a new term called head coach, where he has to be a little bit more proactive in transfers and recruitment and the club management itself. So see, the thing is, he's trying to do a lot of things, how it actually worked out in the major leagues or baseball and MLB. See, the thing, I feel that he's trying to implement what exactly happened there, and it is a little difficult for it. I won't say it can't happen, but I feel if that's going to happen, he needs to give that the time. And taking a calm decision makes a lot more sense. And I feel the decision they take are very rash, and people that he trusts on has to give them the right decision. It's not that Boehly initially did take a lot of decision on his own with combining with Egbali, but now I think he's taken a lot of steps back, and he's set up people to take all those decisions, and he has to just trust them and make the calls. And I feel the last two decisions that last two managers that they hired, or the last manager, Poch, was hired by Paul Winstanley and Lawrence Stewart, and that did work out for them. And I don't know why he was given a very short contract period, and that might be a reason why also Poch wasn't happy with Chelsea. 2 years is not a lot of confidence on a manager that you're just signing. And now he's going to sign a manager, or now they are going to sign a manager for 3 or 4 years. And I hope for them it works out. Otherwise, it will be another big buyout for the manager, and we have to sack him and pay around 20 million on whatever we did for Potter. So all these decisions have to be sit down. They have to collectively come together. The thing is, we are signing a lot of players. It's not that we are not signing. I have a lot of questions on who is making these calls and who is signing these players, because your manager is not said. We've signed a player called Estavavo Willian, and he's talked to Pochettino, and Pochettino is now gone. So what? And he's a 17-year-old kid.
17-year-old. mean, you guys could have like 4 different squads or 4 different competitions, and there is
No,
a single squad.
exactly. So that's the point. So what happens is everyone has their own mind. The players are sold a different project. The manager is sold a different project, and the owners themselves have a different project. They